Hey there, Sarah with Next Gen Medium. I'm a psychic medium intuitive, and I think everybody is capable of these abilities. And first of all, my first mission is to make you aware that that's a possibility. And number two is to offer my experience or my tips, what I think could help somebody get to that threshold of seeing that stuff for themselves. I believe it awakens that soul self, that awareness of your intuition, which is ultimately what leads you to have a relationship with your spiritual self, your higher self, source, God, whatever you want to call it. One of the things I like to do is go to Reddit and see what kind of questions people have. Now, this one isn't so much about mediumship or psychic. It's more of a part of what I had to overcome in order to align with my truth and to accept a new perception of the reality of these two worlds, very different worlds. They function very differently. So I feel like this is more advice, like spiritual advice, than it is anything to do with your soul abilities. So, but in order to use your soul abilities, this is something you need to overcome. So let's just look at this very simple question and see what comes out of my brain here. So we're in the subreddit of spirituality. This person says, I'm constantly in a state of denial. How do I release the defensiveness? Please help me. That's it. That's all they had to say. First of all, being aware of your defensiveness. You may not understand the extent, but you know it's there. That is a huge obstacle to overcome within itself, because so easily we adapt to defending ourselves because that's a part of the egoic self, the egoic world that we live in, where we need to constantly prove our value and our worth. Whereas in the spiritual world, we already know our value and worth, and we don't need to explain anything to anybody. We don't need to defend ourselves. So it really takes us understanding our own value in order to not feel the need to have to be defensive. An example of this. Let's see, feeling defensive. I guess I would parallel this to my experience of feeling that I was capable, feeling that I had gained evidence of my psychic mediumship. Really, it's that mediumship component that was super evidential for me. Meditation I had. I spoke with my husband's grandfather. He gave me information that I went to a living person here on the earth plane, and I asked them these bits of information that I was given during the meditation, and it was proven evidential information, stuff I did not know before that became evidence once it was confirmed. So that opened up the door to more exploration, but it really opened up my heavy probability of this being real. And I think it's really what made me cross the threshold of this becoming my reality, was that experience. So wanting to explore more, I wanted to do readings. I wanted to have somebody in front of me that I didn't really know and to just give them the stuff that was going through my head as a possible reading, psychic or medium or intuitive, just see what would happen. Okay, now I'm thinking of another defensive thing that I could probably bring up. But I think the first thing that was hard for me to do was to write a Facebook post saying, hey, I think this could be real. who wants to play with me? I sat on this Facebook post for about a week because I was scared. I was scared what people were going to think of me. Um, it feels like all my life I've had to really bend myself to be a logical person and maybe even overcompensate for that because I'm just such an imaginative person, right? It's so easy for me to not be in the world of logic that really paying attention to the logical world, what constitutes logic, what those critical thinking points are, were really of high value to me to be perceived of myself amongst people that I've worked with and people that I know. So grounded in logic, like that is always a very valuable trait. Being smart, knowing the things. Luckily, it's easier for me to retain information, almost to the point where it's like useless information, but maybe I could do okay at Jeopardy. But I think information does come in with claircognizance when it comes to playing Jeopardy. So it's maybe not information that I really knew, but somehow it dawns on me what it is. But being a logical person, perceived as logical, I really had to peel a layer of kind of defensiveness of myself. Am I willing to expose this illogical sense, thought, this impractical theory? Am I willing for that to be a reflection of who I am? It took me a week. I published it after going back and forth about it. Why did I publish it? What is more important to you? Staying confined to what people think you are, or finding out who you really are? Do you want to stay repeating the truths that you've been told? Or do you want to find truth for yourself? That's really how I kind of look at the division between the physical world, the egoic self, and the spiritual self, the spiritual entity that is curious, but wants to know how things work for real. Another denial piece is once I started doing readings, I didn't want to be wrong, that is soul sucking, but that's the egoic self. That's the egoic self saying, I need to be right because in the physical world, in the egoic world, being right is of value. Now, if I'm wrong, that means I'm useless. But as I learned with doing readings, sometimes how you interpret things is what's constituted wrong. Sometimes it's the incorrect interpretation. An example of this would be, I did a reading on a woman whose daughter signed her up. And so already I was already kind of feeling like, okay, this person didn't come to me. Her daughter wanted me to do this reading. And the woman was already giving me the vibes that she was like, we'll see how this goes. I'll be open to it. And I understand. I get it. There's a certain amount of proving that I have to do. But honestly, as long as I open up and I just give you what I get, that's me doing my job when it comes to this stuff. So this woman was sitting there graciously, even though she was kind of stern and like, I didn't know how she was going to receive what I gave her. But I was tuning into a mental image of seeing railroad tracks and moving really fast down the railroad tracks and picturing a landscape around me and having a feeling of sitting on a train and feeling like a wholeness that maybe hadn't been felt in a long time. And for me, there was a feeling that I was in my state, in the state of Maine. And there was even like a map of these train tracks following a coast or something. And so I was placing the train in the state of Maine. No, it did not rain. And it did not hurt my brain. Spain. Grain. Bane. Okay. So I mentioned this scenario with those details that I gave you to her, to which she said there was a train ride. We had already established that we were talking with her late husband. And she said it wasn't in Maine. It was actually in England. And she went on to explain what this train ride meant for her husband, her late husband, who had gone through some medical stuff and was sort of in the final days, and they were well aware that it was his final days, and he went on a train ride, and it was a pretty spectacular experience for him. As simple of an experience as it was, and as simple of the gratitude that he felt and that I could pick up on and pass along to her, I also feel like maybe at the time I felt I didn't get it right. I didn't get it right. But the details that I could give allowed for her to place something that was of very great importance to her with the relationship of her husband, an experience they had together. And I think that was a confirmation for her. Was I right that it was in Maine? Nope. Did it take away from giving her a higher probability that I was connecting with her husband? I believe so, because I believe her energy really opened up after we went through that process, and her explaining what had happened, and it really perpetuated the reading from there. I've come to understand that doing readings or just understanding soul stuff, there's only so much to understand. It ebbs and it flows, how things happen, change, and it's like chasing a laser pointer light. It's like a cat chasing a laser pointer light. Like, oh, there it is, but when you think you got it, it disappears like it was never even there. It's just so fluid how it works. I don't feel like I could ever be 100% with this stuff. I think I can get close, but can't ever be 100%. If I could be 100%, I don't think I would be a human being. So that's something else to think about. How much of you is a human being, you know? All of you. So with that, you're never going to be 100% right. So I think when it comes to being in a state of denial, what are you denying? Is it important to your truth? And maybe it's not realized that denial is hindering your knowledge of your truth, yours. Nobody else can have that. That's yours. And it's only you that can have that truth, whatever that is, because your experience makes it completely different than anybody else's. Jerome. I would also consider, is your denial protecting your egoic self? And what does that mean? Your egoic self is the person that needs to prove to other people your value? Why do you need to defend that? Why do you need to defend your value? You shouldn't have to explain anything to anybody. You should be okay with that. I know it's not easy, and there's many, many layers underneath that as to why you've developed to be that person that has denial. We've all had to develop to have denial and to prove. The soul world strips all that away. It doesn't matter. How do you release it? What's important for you to find out? Go for it. What's stopping you? You. Go do that. Maybe you'll find a happy place, a happy spot. So there's my spiritual advice. Not what I was expecting to do today, but maybe that will help you. For me, it was diving into my soul abilities that made me aware of this whole other spiritual world, really start to understand how the energy works, how the thoughts in my brain work, that separation of ego from my spiritual higher self. Let's just say this. If you feel excited about something, but you don't do it, and it's because of your denial, it's because of you putting yourself down or not giving yourself the chance, then you are meant to do that thing that makes you excited, and you need to get over it. Whatever it is that's holding you back. You feel ashamed about it, that's you putting shame on it. You feel embarrassed about it, that's you putting embarrassment on it. Like, that's you. You got to own it. If you're going to be embarrassed about it, like, let's see it. Let's see you feel embarrassed about it. Other people feeling embarrassed for you, that's their problem. You can't ever do anything about that. But what can you do for yourself? That's what this is all about. This. Right here. All right. So my soul abilities was the way that got me into all this stuff. And I think it can be evidential for other people too. Go to my website, nextgenmedium.com. Sign up to be a part of the members access. It's $14 a month. And starting this week, we're going to go over my ebook that I made called 0F's Blissfully Brief Guide to Psychic Medium Intuitive Healing Abilities. It's a practical guide. It's a really long title, and it's supposed to be ironic. It's supposed to be funny for a book that's supposed to be relatively short. And this week, we're going to start things off. We're going to go kind of lesson by lesson through it and do videos. And if you like my podcast, Next Gen Medium Podcast, you can get it on Apple. You can get it on Spotify. With the members access, you also get unlimited streaming for all the episodes. All the episodes aren't available on the podcast platforms. Only through my members access area can you really get into the podcast. And there's some good stuff in there that you don't want to miss out on. Okay, so become part of members access, $14 a month. And I hope to see you there. NextGenMedium.com, Next Gen Medium Podcast. Thank you for watching. Subscribe. I never say that. Subscribe for more videos coming. Bye.